Hello everyone and welcome to Decision 2020. Today TVJ is looking at the candidates for the upcoming September 3 general election. I'm Andrea Chisholm. Now this time we'll be focusing on the constituency of St. Mary Southeastern, where the PNP's Dr. Shane Alexis will be going up against the JLP's Dr. Norman Dunn. We'll begin the first part of our program with an interview with Dr. Shane Alexis. Dr. Alexis, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, in the 2017 by-election, you lost the St. Mary Southeast constituency by more than 900 votes. What are you planning to do differently this time around to make sure you're successful?
Well, first thing I'm planning to do is not lose. And, you know, a lot has changed since 2017. As I think everyone knows, it was my, entrance into representational politics. And since then I stayed. I've done the work, stayed with the people, learned a lot more about not just the geography, but the culture in St. Mary, understanding what some of the challenges are, and meeting people one by one. And so I think that at that time, 7,000 some people voted for me when they didn't know me. 3 years later, a lot more people know me. So I think we'll do a lot better, and I expect to bring it home for the People's National Party on September 3rd.
You mentioned some of the challenges in the constituency. Unemployment is a big challenge. What's the plan to overcome that hurdle?
Well, I think that, first of all, I make the distinction between rural and urban. I think rural development has lagged for many years in Jamaica. St. Mary's has a proud history, certainly Southeast St. Mary, the banana belt, cocoa. But over time, that has just sort of dwindled. People have moved on out of the parish for opportunities, etc. That has affected our local economy. So first of all, there's the national picture, then the local picture is how do we develop our skills, look at new opportunities such as entertainment, food, different experiences. As you know, in the world we want experiences more than we just want pictures or factories, etc. And see where the vibe is in the community, build on what they naturally do well, and try and rebuild our local economy. And I think after COVID, or when I say after COVID, certainly in the medium to long term, we definitely need our own plan in the constituency to determine what are our opportunities, how we're going to implement them together by bringing everyone to the table. The corner youth, the young lady, the single mother, the old woman, church, sporting associations, because a football match can generate a lot of interest in a community and can open up economic opportunities. So first of all is to get an understanding of the issues, but the truth is rural Jamaica has lagged behind in terms of our infrastructure and opportunities, and that's why I want to be in the parliament, to make sure that Southeast St. Mary isn't forgotten in the national picture.
Speaking of opportunities, you're a medical doctor, and I know you've been active with the Anata Bay Hospital in St. Mary. What are some of your plans to specifically improve that hospital in conjunction with the Ministry of Health?
Well, just to repeat something I said before some years ago, the reason I did get into politics is to become the Minister of Health. In other words, so that I can actually implement policies that I think will help, our patients and the medical professionals across the island. Luckily for me, Anata Bay Hospital is a hospital that has done good work over the years. It has a special place in my heart, and I'd like to see us upgrade it to include diagnostics, so CT scans, ultrasounds, and of course, heart testing, etc., because we have to make sure that we have the facilities in our local hospitals to deal with the issues we actually see in the community. So if you have a cancer rate that's increasing, we have to have the ability to not just diagnose, but to treat it. And I think the staff at Anata Bay Hospital is very interested in helping the community some more. We just have to make sure they have the resources. So upgrading the Anata Bay Hospital would be very high up on my list of priorities, as well as ensuring that we have ambulatory care in the inner regions of the constituencies. So in other words, I met a gentleman in Brennard, which is way up in the hills, about 2 weeks ago, and he has prostate cancer, and so he has to change his catheter, which is a tube that goes through the penis into the bladder, and it costs him about $6,000 a trip. Now, this is an old man who lives in one room. Very difficult for him to sustain that. We can send people to persons like that to help with changing tubes like that, dressings, so a pregnant woman who's done, or sorry, a woman who's delivered, a C-section, for example, has a little cut, rather than her spending the money, she doesn't have to come down to the hospital or another health center. We can send persons up on whether it's motorcycles or small cars or jeeps, so that we can reach out in the community. And as everyone knows, I studied in Cuba. This is something that I've learned through my training there, and I think it has a place, particularly in rural Jamaica.
Anata Bay was placed under quarantine in the COVID-19 in the heights of the pandemic. Well, we're still in that section now. How else would you have handled it differently from a community standpoint if you were the health minister?
I think that the primary issue, let me just say I don't agree with many of the decisions that were made from a health perspective dealing with our national response to COVID. Not least of which is certainly a more transparent approach to reporting tests on time, assessing our capacity and building capacity while we face the pandemic. In other words, 3 or 4 months since the pandemic started, our health facilities should be in a better position than they were earlier this year. So developmental changes have not occurred. Specific to Anata Bay, I think the science was clear that there had to be an intervention. The social side of it is what was delayed and lagged. So in other words, when you lock down a community and leave them hungry and locked inside for 4 or 5 days before giving a shopping day, before allowing persons to tend to their animals or their farms, which is part of their economic livelihood, to me that was inhumane, and we could have done better as a country. There's a local or parish parish council that would have developed we expected had a plan for this sort of disaster, but that seemed to have been either not thought out or certainly not implemented quickly enough. So the social side didn't match the health side, and therefore there was a delay, and that delay caused a lot of people not just discomfort and pain and anxiety, but certainly affected people's ability to, for example, feed the chickens that they were raising, to pay for their medical care, to build their home, school fees in September, that sort of thing. So it has, our management of COVID has a significant economic impact, the most vulnerable of which live in a constituency like Southeast St. Mary. Farmers, unemployed, young people, single parents, just barely getting by, and then we shut down their entire community. So I think going forward, it's something that we have to have a more dynamic approach with, make adjustments more quickly, and communicate more clearly to ensure that all the stakeholders know, not in advance, but as the announcement is made within hours, community leaders are aware of what will happen, when, and where it will happen, so that people can be less anxious and cooperate more fully with the authorities.
Just a very quick question, because we're about to wrap up. Housing and road issues are also problematic in your constituency. Very quickly, how will you address that?
I think we start with water. Catchment areas are very small. We've outgrown many of them. Issues with climate change have also affected rainfall and our ability to harvest water. We do have rivers, but they are also drying up. So I think a comprehensive plan has to be developed. We have to find ways of environmentally friendly, sustainable solutions, harvesting rainwater from the roof, etc., educating people using what's been done in other countries, as well as the road network also needs to be addressed, particularly for our farmers and students. Many students are bright enough to leave the community for education, but where taxi drivers and other people don't want to go on the roads to help them get that education, it's holding back a number of our young people. And lastly, our farmers have to get their produce out from the hills and deep valleys. If the road network is poor, they can't move thousands of pounds of produce. They can move a handful or a few scandal bags, but that's not going to be enough to develop the entire constituency. So the road network is more than just a nice road to drive your car. We don't have lots of those, but we can certainly have roads that can allow tractors and trucks to get the produce from inside the constituency out to markets where the restaurants will buy, etc. And I think that if we can achieve that, we can see some economic recovery in the constituency.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shane Alexis, and he's the PNP's candidate in the upcoming September 3 general election for the constituency of St. Mary Southeastern.